In today's video, I'm going to teach you exactly how to use the shake and bake play in pickleball. Odds are you've probably seen people do this before, but in order to make it work, you need to understand each step to pulling it off. And let me tell you, there's probably some intricate things within these steps that you haven't paid attention to. As the game gets more and more powerful due to new paddle technology, this is a play that you have to know. So make sure to understand everything that we cover in this video. What is the shake and bake play? The shake and bake is pretty much the most aggressive play that you can run when you're the serving team. So obviously you have to let the third shot of the rally bounce, the shot right after your serve. On this shot, you go for a drive and your partner moves in to crush the ball, which looks like this. So we're going to stage this a little bit, but essentially I go for a drive, my partner runs in to crush the ball like that. That was a little bit exaggerated, but it's essentially the fastest way that you can win the point when you're serving. And the sort of trademark of the shake and bake is that generally when your partner is up, they cross over to take advantage of that shot. So that's what we call a poach. So in the shake and bake, the most standard form, there's a lot of different ways to do it, but the most standard form, one player stays back and drives and their partner crosses over to take advantage of that shot with a hard volley or an overhead. So to show you another example, it looks just like this. And as you can see, there's a few different parts to getting this play right. There's the drive, there's moving forward, and then there's crossing over. The most important part is the player moving forward, what they do. But first, we need to talk about the drive, because if you don't get the drive right, you're not going to be able to pull off the play. So looking at our drives, the first thing that you want to keep in mind on a drive for the shake and bake, but realistically on any drive, is that you're going to have a little bit more success taking them down the line or down the middle. And there's a few reasons for that. The first is that when I draw a line down the line versus going cross court, the line is shorter, so my opponent has less time to react. And the same goes for down the middle. It's not as much of an angle as a cross court drive, so my opponents have less time to react. There's also the added bonus of going down the middle where you confuse your opponents about who should take the ball. In the shake and bake play though, there's another advantage of not going cross court, and that's if I go across court and my partner's up at the net, the player there has an easier time attacking my partner because they're directly in front of them and they could take advantage of that down the line rule. So going down the line or down the middle is definitely ideal when it comes to the drive on the shake and bake. And one of the best ways to keep that ball low is with topspin, because when I use topspin, the ball essentially will dip down more so that I can get it even lower. And sometimes if I do it right, my opponent might even need to hit up on the ball, which is the ideal situation to running this play effectively. So I'm not gonna go too deep into topspin in this video. I have other videos that go really deep into that if you wanna check them out. Just know, going for a drive with topspin is a super effective way to get your opponents to hit a more defensive volley. And guys, if you're the type of player that struggles with hard drives like this, later in the video, I'm gonna show you exactly how to defend the shake and bake play. So if you're interested in seeing that, stay tuned. Now though, we need to consider what you do as the player that's moving forward. As I mentioned earlier, this is the most important part to making it work. And the first thing to consider is that if the return is difficult, you probably shouldn't go for a drive and you probably shouldn't run the shake and bake play. So before the point starts, before you run the shake and bake play, you want to tell your partner, hey, I think we should run the shake and bake, right? You don't want to just do this without your partner knowing. There's some coordination involved. So in the event that your opponents hit a really good return, it should be known that, okay, maybe I go for a drop here. I don't think we should do the shake and bake. You only really want to go for the shake and bake if your opponents give you an easy return that lets you be aggressive. So an easy return is essentially one that lands shorter in the court, that's a little bit higher, and that's essentially what gives you the time to be able to go for an aggressive drive, because when it's shorter, it gives your opponents less time to react, and when it's higher, you have a better angle over the net. If it's a medium return, you could still go for the shake and bake, totally. I think what you need to be careful of is if they hit a really hard deep return, there you're pretty much destined for failure if you try to play. So you need to sort of have a gauge on that shot to see if it works. The player that's moving in is the one that really needs to be taking this into account, because the second that they see the return looks easy, after you guys agree on using the play, that's when they should start to move forward. So if the player that's moving in sees the return's easy, they should immediately move to about 3 feet behind the kitchen line. So if we see that we get an easy return from Jack, seconder sees that, he's gonna start moving forward, and he should stop around right here. So show me that ready position. And in this position, he gets into what we call ready position, to where he's ready to sort of react to that next ball. I don't fully like going all the way into the kitchen because, as I'll mention later, sometimes you actually want to give yourself some space for reasons that we'll figure out later in the video. But what you need to know, the second you see that easy return, that's when you decide to move in. You don't move in before you see the return or where you see the return is going. So at this point in the shake and bake play, I'm about to hit my drive, and Drew's a few feet behind the kitchen line, and he's making his decision of whether or not he should cross over. And the way that he does that is based off how good of a drive I hit. So out of the corner of Drew's eye, he's sort of watching to see how hard that I hit my drive. And if I hit it nice and hard, he's gonna decide, okay, I'm gonna start shifting a little bit towards the middle of the court because Connor hit a good drive, so I think that they might not hit the best volley. So he'll sort of shift over a little bit. He's not gonna fully cross over just because I hit it hard. But from this position, Drew can make his judgment call. If he sees that Sid is gonna hit a floater volley right to me, now he can make his decision to cross over and kill the ball like he did there. So moral of the story is, when you're the player that's moving forward, you don't want to just blindly run in and blindly cross over. You're sort of making these educated decisions as you see that you have more evidence that the play is going to work out. So in the event that I don't hit a good drive, Drew might want to go from this position and back up a little bit so he can defend, right? So if I'm hitting a ball that's high to Sid, Drew needs to move back because the shake and bake play is not going to work anymore. So each step of this play, Drew's going to use his intuition and his anticipation to determine of where he should be. So if I go for a good drive, Drew's going to use his anticipation, he's going to cross over and pounce on the ball. So this is really the critical part of making this play work. When you're right here, you have to be very aware of what's happening so you can make the best possible decisions. And the last part to pulling this play off is what shot you hit when you're the player that's poaching, right? So the main thing to keep in mind is that when you're hitting the shot, the poach, you want the play to end very quickly. So ideally, if you're running this play, they don't get your poach back. And the way that you make that happen is, one, by hitting it hard. Two, you want to try to get the ball at their feet. So if they give you a high enough shot, you should try to go low at their feet if you can. And three, going down the middle is super effective in this play because a lot of the time you're actually going to be taking this ball more from the middle of the court. So what that looks like when we do it right is this. So Sid gives Drew a higher shot. The higher the ball is, the more you want to take it at their feet. If it's not super high, you could still be aggressive, but you might be better off going down the middle, deeper in the court, because if you don't have that high angle, you can't really get that ball down at their feet. So you really need to make a split-second decision when you get that shot of where you want to take it. But what you want to keep in mind is that you're trying to be really aggressive and end the point fast. If you get into aggressive position with the shake and make play, and the point happens to continue, if my partner takes control, I also want to move in too. So I don't want to just be staying back and watching what they're doing. Hopefully the point ends quickly, but if it doesn't, I should move in as well so that I can be aggressive too. And if this is confusing you, don't worry. At the end of the video, we're going to go through a bunch of different examples of how you can use this play in actual points. So we're going to go through real points and show you in real time how we do it. Before we get into that though, I want to quickly show you how to defend the play, which will actually help you get better at using it too, because you'll know what your opponents are thinking when you're coming forward. So the main thing to keep in mind when your opponents are using the shake and bake play is you want to keep your volley that you hit off their drive as far as you possibly can away from the player that's coming in. So what that looks like is this. Jack's going to be the one driving here, and I'm trying to keep my volley away from Sid, who's trying to cross over. So if I hit my volley down the middle, that gives Sid the perfect opportunity to crush that ball. So by keeping it more towards Jack, who's back, there's not really much Sid can do because he's not going to fully cross over. So my best target is really as far as I can get it away from them. And if you really see them poaching, you can actually go behind them too. So I'll show you what that looks like. So you see there, Sid started crossing over a little early, so he creates an opening on the side that he started on where you can go to. Generally, I'd say going towards the person that's back is more effective. You need to keep it towards the side of the court though, because if you don't, they might be able to pick it off. On the other hand though, you can also go behind the person, which is effective too. I'd say though, going away from them towards their partner is generally safer. Where your opponents can really mess you up on this play though, is if they hit a drive that doesn't hit your sweet spot or you don't have a firm wrist, and you pop it up. So if you pop up their drive, they essentially have a ticket to the kitchen where they can use this play. So to prevent the pop-up, you need to focus on two things. The first is when your opponent's hitting a hard drive, you need to keep a firmer wrist. And the second thing is when your opponent's hitting a hard drive, you need to make sure that your ball hits the sweet spot, to where, if we zoom in a little bit, the sweet spot is the area of your paddle between these four red corners. So you want to hit it very much in the center of the paddle. You have a little more leeway going towards the bottom and top of the paddle. So it's a rectangular area right here. And when they're hitting the ball hard at you, you're really using that firm wrist and blocking the ball in this area. If you hit the ball up here, especially if you have a bad paddle, if you hit the ball up here, there's a high chance you're going to get a dead reaction that'll either make the ball hit the net or it'll float the ball so that they can come in and get aggressive. So whenever my opponent's hitting a drive, I'm really just focusing on hitting that sweet spot and having a firm wrist and blocking. So as you can see, my motion here is really compact. You don't want to be taking full swings or have a loose wrist in this situation. But if you feel like no matter how hard you focus on the sweet spot or making your wrist firm, you still have a bad reaction, that's when I recommend investing into a better paddle with a bigger sweet spot. So as I mentioned, what will kill you on these shots is missing it out to the sides of the paddle. And with a normal paddle that doesn't have a big sweet spot, this is way more likely to happen. So with our paddle, the Sweet Spot Pro, you just have a way less of a chance of getting that dead reaction, which we call a mishit, which makes it a lot easier to defend those hard shots at the net. And it makes it a lot easier to hit returns. And a lot of the shots where having a big sweet spot is going to be a big determinant to your success. So if you're interested in getting a new paddle, highly recommend going and checking ours out. But another way that you could also boost the likelihood of hitting the sweet spot in any shot is adding some lead tape to your paddle. So I don't have any lead tape on this paddle, but as you can see on our paddle, we put some key locations that are the best for putting lead tape. So regardless of what your weight preference is, putting lead tape on your paddle is going to also make your sweet spot bigger, which is going to make it easier to defend drives and defend the shake and bake. So highly recommend going up and checking lead tape too if you already have a nice paddle. Now guys, we're going to go through some full court examples so that you can see what this play looks like in real time. Make sure to play close attention because like I mentioned, there's a lot of intricate things you need to keep in mind to make this play work. So that was honestly a pretty routine example. Jack didn't hit the highest ball to Drew, but because he was up there and ready, he was still able to take control of the point. That was the textbook example of what the shake and bake play looks like, but as you'll see, it's not how it goes every time. That's a good example of why you want to take your drives down the middle. As you can see, Drew literally hit that so well down the middle that they didn't decide who should take it, and we got a free point, so we didn't even have to run the play. So there, I didn't fully run the play and take that ball out of the air, but because Drew hit such a good drive, I was able to cross over and be aggressive with the speed up, so we still got the point. So it's not always going to work out perfectly, but if you do it right, you know, you have to improvise a little bit. There's a lot of different ways you can get it done. So there's a good example of where you might actually not need to cross over. So Drew didn't hit the greatest drive, so I didn't necessarily feel like I needed to cross over, but I essentially did the shake and bake play without the poach. So some people would call that the crash, but it's pretty much still the shake and bake. So just know you don't always need to cross over for this to work. You can still be aggressive from the same side you started on. So there you saw, sometimes when you do this play, you might not be able to fully take control of the point, and you kind of have to be ready that sometimes you might get into a hands battle. So a lot of the time, you're essentially just skipping to a hands battle, you're skipping the dinking and resets. You're not going to end the point on that first shot, but you can take control with the hands battle, so that's something you need to be ready for. Now guys, our opponents are going to start doing some shake and bakes, and we're going to work on defending them.
Got it.
So there was another example of when the shake and bake can turn into more of a hands battle. As you can see, the point didn't end very quickly, but they were still able to get us under more pressure pretty fast using the play. What's important to note though is that it's a risky play, so you're not always going to win when you use it. There, we won the point. It's kind of something you have to keep in mind when you're using the play. You're not always going to win, but over time, if you do it right, you should win more than half. Ooh. So there was an example of why doing the shake and bake with a righty-lefty combo can be effective. So Jack's righty here, Sid is a lefty. So if Jack has a forehand in the middle from the back, Sid can actually poach with his forehand on the other side. So a righty would have normally had to hit a backhand there. But because Sid is a lefty, he can take advantage of that, and it's a little easier for players who prefer their forehand. So if you're playing with a lefty, using the shake and bake might actually work a little better. So give that a shot. And guys, if you want to go deeper into getting topspin on your drives to get those balls nice and low, watch this.